Lila Blake stood quietly in the corner of the ballroom, her eyes lowered as the guests laughed and clinked glasses around her. The music was cheerful, the chandeliers blazed like captured suns, but inside her, a storm brewed. Every time she looked at her husband, Ronan, standing proudly in his tailored suit with his mistress by his side, her heart clenched. Just a year ago she had believed in love. Ronan had swept her off her feet. His confidence, his charm, his promises of forever. She was an orphan, simple and gentle, with no money or family name. He, on the other hand, was ambitious, with a hunger for status that never ended. When he proposed, she thought her prayers had been answered. But soon after marriage, everything changed. At first came the coldness, the silent treatment. Then came the insults disguised as jokes. And then came the blows. The first time Ronan hit her, it was over a broken glass. He had shouted that she was careless, unworthy of being his wife. Lila had cried, but he had apologized the next day with flowers and a soft kiss on her forehead. She forgave him, because love, she thought, meant forgiveness. But forgiveness became her cage. Tonight was their third wedding anniversary. Ronan had thrown the party not for her, but for Clara, his new mistress, a glamorous woman with red lips and a smirk that cut deeper than any knife. The entire city whispered about their affair. Lila had seen them together, laughing in expensive restaurants, his hand on Clara's waist. Yet she stayed silent. Where would she go? She had nothing. Lila. Ronan's sharp voice broke through her thoughts. She flinched and turned. Yes, Ronan? He was standing with Clara, surrounded by people. Come here, he said with a cruel smile. Our guests are thirsty. You forgot to serve the champagne. Her hands trembled as she carried the tray across the polished floor. When she reached them, Clara deliberately brushed against her, sending 2 glasses crashing to the ground. The room went silent. Clara gasped theatrically. Oh my! She ruined my dress. Ronan's face turned dark. Lila, he hissed, what have you done? It was an accident. Before she could finish, his hand struck her cheek. Art. The sound echoed. The guests froze, stunned. Some turned away, pretending not to see. Others whispered. Lila staggered, clutching her face. Ronan, please, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. Please? He grabbed her arm. You embarrass me in front of everyone, and you say please? Clara smirked behind him. Ronan's rage only grew. That night, in the privacy of their home, he didn't stop at one slap. He hit her again and again, until her screams broke into silence. 100 times. She counted. Because every blow burned a number into her soul, a reminder that love had died. When he finally left the room, drunk on his own cruelty, Lila lay on the floor, her body trembling, her eyes swollen shut. The next morning she packed a small bag, took the little money she had hidden, and disappeared. For months no one knew where she went. Ronan didn't care. He told people she was unstable, that she'd run away with another man. Clara moved into the mansion. The city forgot Lila existed. But far away in another country, a miracle awaited. Lila had gone to a small hospital in the countryside to recover. There she met an elderly woman named Margaret Sinclair. The old woman had been kind to her, feeding her, caring for her wounds, and asking nothing in return. They became close, almost like mother and daughter. Lila never spoke of her past, she only said she wanted to start over. Months later Margaret passed away. Lila wept, feeling she had lost the only person who had ever truly loved her. But when the lawyers arrived, they told her something she could hardly believe. Margaret Sinclair had left everything to her. Her fortune, her company, her mansion. Because Margaret had known who Lila truly was. You were the daughter of my business partner, Margaret had written in her will. When your parents died in the fire, I couldn't find you. Now I have. And now, you shall have what's rightfully yours. Lila stared at the letter through tears. The girl who once had nothing was now the heiress to one of the largest estates in the country. It took her months to heal, body and soul. She learned to speak with confidence, to dress with grace, to stand tall. The bruises faded, but the memories remained, carved deep inside. And one cold morning she stood before the mirror in a sleek black dress, her reflection strong and unshakable. It's time, she whispered. It was time to return. Not as the broken wife who once begged for mercy, but as the heiress who would make Ronan regret every slap, every insult, every cruel word. Her car stopped in front of the Blake mansion, the same place she had been thrown out of like trash. The guards didn't recognize her. The servants stared as she walked past them, her heels clicking on the marble floor. The party inside paused as she entered. Ronan turned, confusion flickering across his face. Clara's smile faltered. "Who are you?" he asked. Lila met his eyes calmly. "Someone you used to know." And the room fell silent as the woman he thought he had destroyed stood before him, radiant, powerful, untouchable. He had no idea that the real punishment had just begun. Ronan's confident grin wavered as the mysterious woman stepped into the light. The murmurs spread like wildfire around the hall. Her poise, the quiet authority in her voice, the air of wealth and power that surrounded her, it was enough to silence the room. "Lila?" he finally whispered, disbelief creeping into his tone. Her lips curved slightly, but there was no warmth in her smile. "You remember my name. That's a start." For the first time, Ronan saw the woman he had once crushed beneath his heel, and she was nothing like the fragile, trembling wife he remembered. The bruises were gone, her posture straight, her eyes sharp as polished glass. She looked every inch an heiress, the one thing he had always wanted to marry but never could. "Why, you're alive," he stammered, his arrogance faltering. "Oh, very much so," she said calmly. "And I've come to reclaim what's mine." Clara, standing beside him in her glittering gown, forced a laugh. "This is absurd. Ronan, who is this? Some imposter pretending to be your wife?" "Everyone knows Lila ran away." Lila's gaze flicked to her, cold and cutting. "You're right, Clara. I did run away. From the filth, the lies, and the man who thought a woman's worth could be measured by obedience." She took a slow step closer. "But I didn't vanish into nothing. I found people who showed me what real strength means." A hush fell again. The air crackled with tension as Lila handed a thick envelope to one of the reporters who had been invited to cover the evening's event. Inside were documents, photos, medical reports, and testimonies, proof of Ronan's abuse. Ronan's face drained of color. "What are you doing?" "Setting the record straight," she said softly. "For 3 years you painted me as a runaway, unstable, unfaithful. But this," she gestured to the documents, "this tells the truth. Every slap, every bruise, every scream you silenced." The reporter's flashes lit up the room like lightning. Clara's face twisted in panic. Ronan stepped forward, his voice trembling with forced authority. "You can't do this, Lila. This will destroy my career, my company." "You destroyed yourself," she interrupted. "The day you raised your hand against me, you signed your own downfall." He grabbed her wrist, desperate now. "Listen to me, I was angry. You made mistakes." She jerked free, eyes blazing. "A mistake is spilling wine, Ronan. Hitting your wife 100 times is evil." The crowd gasped. Some guests quietly stepped back from him. Others whispered in disgust. Ronan's empire of lies was crumbling right before his eyes. Lila turned to face everyone. "I didn't come back for revenge. I came back for justice. Because women like me, women who are broken and left behind, deserve to be heard." The applause started slowly, one person at first, then another, until the hall thundered with clapping. Ronan stood frozen, the world spinning around him. But the night wasn't over yet. Moments later, the heavy doors of the ballroom opened again. A man in a dark suit walked in, James Sinclair, Margaret's nephew and now Lila's business partner. He approached her with quiet respect. "Everything's ready," he murmured. Lila nodded. She turned back to Ronan, her tone calm and final. "As of this morning, Sinclair Enterprises has officially taken over Blake Holdings. You'll receive the documents tomorrow. I bought your debts, your properties, and your mansion. You no longer own anything, not even this house." Ronan's jaw dropped. "You, what?" Lila's eyes gleamed. "Poetic, isn't it? You married me for money, and now you've lost everything to the woman you tried to destroy." Clara's scream broke the silence. "You monster," she spat at Ronan. "You told me you were rich. You told me she was dead." Ronan turned to her, panicking. "Clara, wait please, I can fix this." She slapped him hard across the face. "Fix it yourself, loser." And with that, she stormed out, her heels clicking furiously on the marble floor. The guests whispered louder now, a mix of pity and delight. Ronan stood there, trembling, his once perfect image shattered beyond repair. Lila took a deep breath, looking around the grand hall that had once been her prison. "Everyone, thank you for coming," she said gracefully. "Enjoy the rest of the evening, on me, the new owner of this mansion." And with that, she walked out with James beside her, her head held high. Outside, the night air was cool, the city lights sparkling in the distance. For the first time in years, Lila felt light, as if every bruise, every tear had turned into wings. James glanced at her as they got into the car. "You did it," he said softly. "You didn't just win, you made them all see." She smiled faintly. It wasn't about winning, James. It was about ending the silence. He nodded. So what now? Lila looked out the window, watching the city pass by. Now I build something better. A foundation for women who've been through what I have. No more hiding. No more shame. In the following weeks, news of the scandal flooded every outlet. Ronan Blake's empire collapsed overnight. Investors withdrew, his board resigned, and he was left bankrupt, facing criminal charges for domestic abuse. Clara disappeared, and the mansion was auctioned, officially purchased under Lila's name. Lila transformed the estate into a women's recovery center, the Margaret House, in honor of the woman who had given her a second chance at life. Every wall inside was painted bright and warm, a contrast to the cold marble she once feared. There were laughter and music, not cruelty and silence. Survivors found refuge there, food, shelter, and hope. Sometimes, when Lila walked the halls, she would pause at the grand staircase where Ronan had once humiliated her. The memories would flicker, sharp and painful, but they no longer owned her. One evening, as the sun set through the large glass windows, a young woman approached her, trembling. "Miss Lila, thank you," she said, tears glistening in her eyes. "If it weren't for this place, I don't know what I'd have done." Lila smiled gently, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe now. And you're stronger than you think." As the girl left, Lila looked up at the golden sky. For a moment, she imagined Margaret's kind face smiling down at her. Ronan, meanwhile, lived alone in a small apartment, haunted by regret. Every newspaper headline, every online article carried his downfall. He tried to contact Lila once, begging for forgiveness. But she never answered. Some wounds didn't deserve to be reopened. Instead, she poured her energy into rebuilding others. She gave scholarships, funded counseling programs, and spoke at events about survival and resilience. Her voice became a symbol of courage. And sometimes, late at night, when she stood by her window, the wind would whisper softly, carrying the echoes of her past. She didn't flinch anymore. She simply closed her eyes and smiled. Because she had turned her pain into purpose, her scars into strength. And somewhere deep in her heart, she whispered, to the woman she once was, "You didn't deserve the pain. But you deserved the power that came after it." The story of Lila Blake, the woman who was slapped 100 times and rose 1,000 times stronger, became a legend. And every person who heard it learned one truth. You can't destroy a woman who has learned to rebuild herself.